So this purging has been going on before now. Does
Yes.
that mean that some of these voters were purged as recently as the November 3rd election?
We don't know if it was after the November 3rd election or right before, but it could have been because there were so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 197,000, that's a lot of people.
It is a lot of people. And could make a significant difference. I mean,
Absolutely.
Biden won Georgia by less than that.
Yes.
So to go to show you how many. So you, on behalf of the Rainbow Push Coalition and the NBA and the Transformative Justice Coalition, you have filed suit. Is that accurate?
So that's accurate in a sense, but let me broaden it a little bit.
Okay, please.
So Rainbow Push Coalition, Transformative Justice Coalition, Black Voters Matter Fund are the plaintiffs in this case. And Gerald Griggs and G.D. Myron out of New York were the initial attorneys to file suit. As I'm chair of the board of Rainbow Push, initially my involvement, my engagement, even though I intended to make an appearance in my individual capacity, was as the chair of Rainbow Push. So Rainbow Push is a plaintiff in this. But I today made an appearance as counsel of record and representing those three organizations in this. So Gerald Griggs, who is the lead local counsel here, is a National Bar Association lawyer. He's an MBA lawyer. So what's important here to note is that the NBA is leading this litigation, which could turn out to be some of the most important litigation in this election season as it relates to the runoff. Because what we are asking is for the Secretary of State to restore those people back to the registration. We want it to be restored. So we're asking for injunctive relief. And we do have a hearing actually that's been set for December 10th. Because no matter when, if it's restored, if it happens, those people would be eligible to vote.
So
that have been purged from the poll.
So you filed in court. This is in
it's in federal court, U.S. District Court, Northern District of Georgia, which is the Atlanta division.
So I find myself, I think they call it forum shopping these days when it comes to these courts. Is this a district, is this Northern District 1 that might be amenable to a case like this, or is this a district that has Trump appointees, or what do we know about the court?
Well, what we know is that we have a fair judge. This is the judge that's providing over fair fight. Fair fight has litigation as well. Good. So, you just never know when you file cases who you're gonna the pick of the draw, and we have a fair judge. The judge has set a hearing. All we want is fairness. Let the Secretary of State prove that these voters were not purged illegally. They have the list like we have the list. We have the evidence like they have the evidence. We have an expert that's gone through, and because you can't just file a case like this without having the evidence. If you want it to stick, some people certainly do, but we have. I'm just stating the facts. I'm not talking about anybody in particular, any group, because this is a nonpartisan effort.
Yes, ma'am.
We just want people in Georgia who have been purged from the voting polls to be restored, because it was not done appropriately. It wasn't done according to the National Voter Registration Act.
Yeah.
So it's a violation. So the Secretary of State made a statement some time ago that if people were purged just like this, it would take a few hours just to get them back. Okay, well, just like this, get them back.
Yeah, yeah.
If it pans out, of course, we're involved in a legal proceeding. We filed this in court. There's going to be a hearing, and we'll see what happens.
So folks, you see how CK did that very artfully without naming anybody, but they don't go to court without having evidence. Okay, so they know you're not going to worry about that in this situation. Having said that, CK, in a case like this, if the state of Georgia Secretary of State wanted to, couldn't they just settle and say, you know what, for the good of all, we're just going to go ahead and restore? They could do that if they wanted to, couldn't they?
Absolutely. They've got the ability to do that. They have the ability to research 197,000. That's a lot of people. But they had to have done some due diligence to make the determination these people needed to be purged. So they must have it in their system what they base that upon. We're saying it was done improperly, that the right lists weren't used, information wasn't correct. So if they believe that it was done correctly, so they should have the evidence to prove that. But in any event, we're in court. And this is just really about justice and democracy. People should have the right to vote, the ability to vote. They shouldn't just be purged unceremoniously without. There's some purgings that are correct. You move out of state. People die. There are reasons why people are purged and no longer registered to vote. Legitimate reasons. But what we're saying is there are about 197,000 that we believe are not for legitimate reasons based on the information and evidence that we have.
Now, if there's a hearing December 10th,
Mm-hmm.
that's clearly enough time for there to be a ruling or a settlement restoring those voters to the roll in time for them to vote in the runoffs, correct?
That is correct. Although, let me just tell you a little wrinkle. So in Georgia, the last day to register to vote is December 7th. Okay. But that's okay. This is the Secretary of State. We're in litigation. The judge can order. And remember, the Secretary of State that said, you can restore whatever. So the judge, and there's a whole process that we have outlined in our pleadings. This can be done before the election. It really can.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we filed now. There are a lot of procedural hoops that one had to jump through in terms of timing of filing it. And we have jumped through those procedural hoops, we believe, so that we're in strong footing. We're in strong footing with this litigation. At issue is the 197,000 people who could be disenfranchised voters, who could be stripped of their right to vote improperly. And that's not right. That's not what democracy is about. That's a nonpartisan issue, by the way. I feel pretty certain that there are Republicans and Democrats that are in that 197,000.
Mm-hmm.
The evidence that we have, since these are mostly in the counties surrounding the Atlanta metropolitan area, perhaps there are more Black and brown people. I don't know. We'll just have to see. But, this is not a partisan issue. This is an issue, quite frankly, that everyone should embrace. Why wouldn't you want people who are improperly purged from the polls to be restored, no matter who you are?
So how did we come about this information evidence? Voters were going to vote and were turned away. Is that what was happening?
That's part of it. That's part of it. I mean, there are groups that actively seek to fight voter suppression. And this is something that's not new in the world of voter suppression. There are a lot of states that do that. They just purge voters. So people try to vote and they're being turned away. But also when cards are sent, a lot of people didn't realize that they had been purged because we have access to the information and they didn't realize that they had been purged from the polls.
Okay. So some of them obviously would go and vote and then be shocked when they were turned away, I guess.
Well, that's why we have said from the beginning, check your voting status. Go to vote.org. There are a lot of sites. You can go to the Secretary of State site in Georgia and you can check your voting status. We've said that, but just think about this, Mark, for a second. In rural communities where there's no internet, there's not bandwidth, you don't have that, they may not even be aware. There are so many people in the state of Georgia that aren't really aware there's a runoff election.
Yeah.
If you don't have real access to the internet, if you're not following on CNN and all of that, what's going on, you're not keeping up on this. You knew there was a presidential election, and a lot of people think, okay, I did it, I voted, I'm good. We're good.
Right.
And so having to re-educate our communities to make sure that they are aware so that they can exercise their right to vote if they choose to do so. That's what we're about. We just don't want anyone saying you can't vote and stripping them from that right where we think is illegally or improperly.
Were there any other issues that were used to justify the purging besides address changes?
I think it was primarily people who had moved, but I'm eager. I don't want to speak for the Secretary of State.
Gotcha. Okay.
But one of the issues was, people moving, and some of the people didn't move, hadn't moved, were purged. So I don't know what their answer to the complaint is going to be. There's going to be a hearing. And so we'll just have to see what the Secretary of State does and what type of justification is given from the Secretary of State.
So the Secretary of State, I say it's too early. They've not filed a response to your claim yet, have they?
Because we filed it yesterday.
It's valid, so it's fresh, and it's live.
And it's live.
Yeah. So folks, we're gonna watch this very closely. And again, this is why the National Bar Association exists. This is why there is a collaboration between organizations like the Black Voters Matter Fund, Transformative Justice, and the Rainbow Push Coalition, of which C.K. Hoffler is the board chair. these types of collaborations exist so that we can stand up at moments like this and push back against some of this, and be sure that as many people, and we all know how important this runoff is in Georgia. And CK, you're right. You can't discern how many Democrats were purged versus how many Republicans. And let's be honest. I mean, there are even groups. Roger Stone is running around telling Republicans not to vote. Which, if we're going to be fair, when you do that, that's a form of voter suppression. So, for you,
we want everybody to vote. We want everybody to vote. Just vote.
Right.
Just have the right to vote.
Right.
We're not even telling you how to vote. We just want everyone to. That's why people died. So that's why there were marches. That's why there was a Voting Rights Act, so that Black people, brown people could vote. Yeah. And so we're not going to sit by, not the National Bar Association, and allow that very precious right to vote to be stomped on, obliterated, taken, and stolen without a fight. And we believe this is the fight. And we're fighting for everyone. That's the beauty of this, that you don't have to be a Democrat or Republican. You should want to ensure that anyone who's been improperly purged as a voter can be reinstated so that they can vote if they choose to do so.